Welcome to the Trailblazers. I'm your host, Perry Rarick. The purpose of the Trailblazers is to share with you interesting discussions I have with trailblazing business leaders. They're innovative, our conversations are thought provoking. My guests are experts at what they do, and they're not afraid to challenge the status quo when it makes sense and positive outcomes can be achieved. My trailblazer guest today is my good friend, Oliver Stauffer. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Packaging Technologies and Inspection. They're also known as PTI. Oliver and the team at PTI are experts in package integrity and seal quality assurance for the pharmaceutical, med device, and food industries. And this is the last critical step in delivering quality life sciences products to patients and consumers. They've been doing it for 30 years. They are experts with a history and the knowledge built on that history that's just it's incomparable to anybody else that's doing this. Oliver leads an organization with an innovative culture, and I don't say that lightly. They have an innovative culture, and they've been able to commercialize innovation like few can, and that's a really hard thing to accomplish. We're going to talk a bit about that in our interview. Oliver, welcome to the Trailblazers.
Perry, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a great podcast you're hosting, and it's just an honor to be here with you and to be on the podcast talking about what we're up to here. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Oliver, I think you and I met about 15 years ago.
Right in that
Yeah.
time range. Yeah.
Your father was still active, maybe not full time, but he was still active in the business. And I had the most interesting conversation with the two of you together as you spoke about the history of PTI, how you innovate. You were completing each other's sentences. And when I speak to you today, I hear your father at times speaking through you.
Yeah.
So it's a real joy to know you for that long and to understand all the work that went into PTI. So thank you for letting me in on that early on.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. Me and my father, while we're two different individuals, I certainly carry a lot of his mannerisms, and when I speak and when we're deep in the weeds of technical stuff, folks will often be reminded of their conversations with Tony, and so I appreciate that. And yeah, he's a different, and when I say different individual, it takes a different personality to be a founder than it takes to take it in its next chapter, and that's been very much part of our journey, right? That he carried PTI through its initial chapter, and I'm continuing it on, continue carrying that torch. So yeah,
And carrying it well, I would add.
thank you for that. Thank you.
So we're going to talk about, of course, the last critical step in this very long process, whether it's food, especially pharmaceutical and med device, this long, complex process of taking a good idea from discovery through commercialization, and how you work in that space and that final critical step. But I want to mention I want to highlight this with the listeners. I want to emphasize that you've got this culture of innovation that you've commercialized. That's hard to do. It's hard to sustain over time. And for our audience, listen to how an innovator talks about every aspect of the business, because we're going to talk specifically about how you do that, but you're going to hear it throughout. So I just wanted to highlight that and listen for that, because you're going to hear an innovator speaking today. So before we get started, Oliver, or as we get started, can you talk about PTI? What do you do?
Mhm.
Where you fit in this complex process, and how critical that is?
Great. So PTI, we have always been focused on one core test and measurement solution, and that's container closure integrity testing of primary packaging. So primary packaging is the barrier packaging that preserves the properties, the headspace, the chemistry of your product. And so PTI's test solutions have always been involved in assuring the integrity of that barrier, ensuring there are no leaks. And so that's been our core mission. And we started in the container and the plastics industries. And as we improved our capabilities and knowledge, we started moving to higher and higher risk applications. So plastics, you just think about oil and milk jugs and those kind of blow molded containers. And that's 30, 40 years ago, PTI was doing that. And then we start moving into more food type packaging and, with other technologies like vacuum decay. And then in the early 2000s, we really identified our niche as a provider of CCI solutions to the highest risk applications. And so providing leak testing offerings to pharmaceutical prefilled syringe applications, uh, class 3 medical devices, just about anything where there is not just a sterile barrier, but oxygen, moisture, bacteria, all of these things are going to place the product at risk. And so that's been our core focus. That's what we're up to. And uh, I'll say this, we're a specialty house. People with the biggest challenges, people staring down the most treacherous paths of CCI or dealing with some of the tallest mountains to climb, will say, uh, often call us because you're going to get clarity, scientific clarity. We'll give you guidance. We often consider ourselves Sherpas in that journey. We'll tell you which way you should go and whether PTIs. We have 6 solutions, and it's oftentimes that none of those 6 solutions is going to solve the client's problem. So I'll gladly send them down a different path if that's the right path. And we know a lot of partners out there that produce great CCI solutions that will also serve them. So
This has come to play when we talk about innovation and your culture of innovation. But as you describe how you've changed over time, I'm thinking of the dosage forms and how they have evolved. So almost exclusive. Well, I don't want to say exclusively, but there's still a lot of solid dose. It's the most common form, but it was much more predominant 30 years ago. Now you're talking about pre-filled syringes and some of what you have to do to ensure protection of that product as it gets into the supply chain and onto the user. So how important is that? And where do you start talking to your innovators, the drug and med device innovators? When do you begin talking to them about the importance of that?
yeah, so let's first look at packaging and understand. So packaging is the only thing protecting the product on its journey. Once it leaves that warehouse, you've got the package, and that is it, right? That's what you're relying on to assure that this product will arrive at the patient safely, the primary and that secondary packaging to protect it. And so the packaging serves an extremely important purpose for patient safety. And so that's something that I think is um, we have to understand. Now, PTI, we are supporting clients on the entire journey, whether it's the inception in the design phase, all the way to eventual in production quality control. Clients, so when clients are out there developing a new solution, developing a package, packaging is or developing just a product. Packaging is often not the forethought. But I was just on the phone with some glass specialists, and one of the first things you need to do if you're dealing with the parenteral, you need to make sure that there's no interaction between this product and the glass. And then over the shelf life of this product, that there is going to be no interaction. So very early on, immediately you're talking about the barrier properties and what's critical to this product. And will this product interact with the glass? And that is very early on. You need to do those stability studies very early. And similarly, there are container closure issues that need to be addressed very early on. So as you're selecting your componentry and designing the container and the auto injector or the device, whatever it may be, once you've designed it, you have a design. On paper, it looks beautiful. Now we have to qualify that this design is going to be perfect into the sunset, over the horizon, right? And so to make that happen, ultimately, you have to do a very deep dive on the container design and validate it, typically using helium leak detection systems. So PTI has a helium leak detection solution that also is operating with 21 CFR Part 11. So as you're developing the container and as you're doing this development work, you also are abiding by all the critical data integrity requirements that are needed. And you're developing a library of data to show that this container performs long term. Now that syringe moves further down that development pipeline, and you now have a pre-filled syringe, and you need to make sure that your fill finish process isn't, in fact, creating integral containers. So at that point, you can use high voltage or vacuum decay to assure the integrity of a prefilled syringe. But even more importantly, we need to know the FDA requires that you inspect the assembled system, right? So you can leak test that prefilled syringe in isolation. That's fantastic. Great step to take. But the FDA, the regulatory bodies need you to inspect the entire assembled system and the completed system. And so there are solutions, and PTI is deploying vacuum decay to inspect the fully assembled auto injector to assure the integrity of those container formats. And so we have a deep knowledge of each stage of the process. We have a deep knowledge of the technologies that you can deploy. And more importantly, we have a deep knowledge of the pitfalls that will occur, that do exist on this journey. We're here to get you to the peak, right? And that's the goal. And so there are a lot of nuance as you're dealing with container closure integrity, and that's what we're here for. We're not selling equipment. That's not who we are. And I think that's really important as clients face the CCI journey, they can really start to understand some of the risks. Quality risk management is such an important aspect to this journey, and PTI is able to help you articulate what risks you're facing, how should you manage them, and how do you collect data to assure that that risk has been mitigated. Uh, so that's really what we're up to in that client journey, right? How we're helping the clients.
Great job illuminating something that doesn't often get a lot of attention. You know, everybody wants to talk about the innovation of the therapy itself, but so important what you're talking about, and thank you for shedding light on that the way you do. These therapies are also now. You spoke about patient safety. Of course, that's paramount. But these therapies are also extreme. They're getting more and more expensive. So you're also talking about protecting a product that if it does fail once it goes out the door in a package, it could be tens of millions of dollars that could be lost.
Yeah, absolutely. Recalls can be extremely expensive, and so I think that Um, we talk about all PTI systems are non-destructive, so we often talk about the benefit of non-destructive testing, and you're not wasting product, or you can do other testing on this product that you just did a vacuum leak test on. And so, we talk about that value of non-destructive testing, but more so in the high risk pharmaceutical space, it's really going to be about assuring that you do not have an adverse quality event, and that in fact you have all the right data to support that this batch, because each batch requires some level of quality control management, right? And so even then we can assure that each batch is abiding and aligned with the quality requirements that are laid out by the this product itself, the quality management system of the product itself. And so that's where I feel that really the risk associated with parenterals, it's it's a journey that's laden with a lot of risk, and identifying the opportunities where you can de-risk early on in your design phase, but also eventually just preventing overall adverse quality events. There's a huge cost associated with that. The primary barrier of that primary package, prefilled syringes, that is protecting the product through that patient journey to the patient itself. And so if we are taking patient safety seriously, this is one of those areas that I think is it's low-hanging fruit. It's real evidence-based quality risk management. And I think that that's as companies deploy more and more evidence-based and deterministic quality control, quality risk management solutions, they have better control of their product, better control of what's out there, and ultimately, they hold the longevity when it gets to that quality position.
Yeah. I want to have you talk a little bit about, I'm going to call it your culture of innovation. I'm not sure what you call it, but if you could describe it and that strategy you use. So, can you just talk about this innovative culture that you've been able to establish at PTI?
Yeah, I think, it certainly we have a culture here, but it's also the people, right? It's the people that you have on your ship, not just, what's happening on the ship itself. And so we have a lot of really creative and excellent people, but we've always been a culture of innovation, right? This has always been a yes company. Yes, we can do that. Yes, we'll find a way to do that. And we carve a way forward. We find a path. We find those technologies and solutions that make it possible. Um, as far as today, PTI has always been this culture of innovation. But how do you maintain it once you get beyond 50 employees, and how do you operate a culture that has that level of brainstorming and creative thinking? Um, it's we operate a fairly flat organization, right? It's not a top down. Every person within this organization has a voice, has a strong voice. Um, I There are no bad questions to ask, and I'm certainly the number one person to prove that. I ask a lot of uh, really odd questions, and but it's in those moments that you're starting to lift some stones, and you start to ask a different question that people say, "Hey, yeah, we could try running this leak test with a different medium, or we could try this using a different sensor, or we can modulate the sensor's response differently." There's so many different things that come from just looking at the facts in a different way, asking the question differently, um, and being super inquisitive. And I think that's who we are. I really pride myself on trying to hire smarter people and to foster them here. And so I think when you are in that CEO position, if you want a culture of innovation, you have to just absolutely throw fuel on that fire of genius and brilliance that we have. And so we have a lot of very intelligent individuals. And what do they need? What do they want to be better scientists, better engineers? And that ultimately, the smart people, that's what they really care about, is making a difference in the world. So we have a lot of great people that want to make a difference in the world. And as a CEO, it's my job to set the playing field. It's my job to say, hey, here are the lines we got to play within. Let's start playing. Let's play some ball. And and we are a company of nerds. That's who we are. Right. It's um if my team members are talking about work or they're talking about personal life, the conversations here are fantastic. Um, Really excellent individuals, and we're really deep into a lot of the technical stuff. And so I think that's who we are. It's our culture. It's something that we've continued to embody. It's something that I never want to get rid of, and it's something I'm very proud of, actually. Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up.
I love your description. That is great. I haven't heard anything like that. You know, we talk innovation all the time. Arguably, every new drug or med device is innovative, you're going well beyond that, and I love your description of that. I think what do you say? Yes, we can. Yes, we
Yes, we can. Yeah.
can.
And I'll say that as a company grows, when we were small, we were far more agile, right? So you don't wanna lose that agility when you're big.
Mm.
And so we don't wanna lose that agility, but we do have to start to standardize and specialize. So in the past, when we used to be far more, let's say, cavalier and chasing an opportunity, today we know what we do well. We know where we do it well. We know where we are effective. And, after this journey that we've been on as a company, and, now that we're 60 something employees, we do have clarity about that journey and what the next step is and where we're going to deliver value for our clients.
That's awesome. So I know you're an innovative, curious person. You've you've been talking about that. It comes through loud and clear. And I know you're always thinking, what's next? You're thinking ahead. What could come next? What are some of the things? And I won't come back to you and say, Oliver, you said this was going to happen. But what do you see happening in the next 3, 4, 5 years? From a technology, inspection technology, point of view in these industries.
So more and more technologies are becoming cheaper and more capable. So, we might have had a frequency of energy that 10, 20 years ago, we looked at those sensory technologies. And the controller might have cost $30,000, and the frequency didn't have a sharp enough focus to get us the measurements we need. And today, those technologies are becoming cheaper and cheaper, just like the chip industry or any other technological space. The technology becomes cheaper, it becomes faster, it becomes smaller, right? So 10, 20 years ago, when we said, no, we can't try this out, today these technologies may again be available to elicit some sort of test measurement from the production environment. So technologies are becoming more and more available, right? They're becoming more attainable. They are going to give us more and more information in the production setting. So I do envision that more and more process analytical technologies will be deployed for container closure integrity and for other quality-based line measurement systems. And I say that, uh, a process analytical technology, I look at that as a line measurement solution that is observing a drift or pattern or change. It's not absolute in what it's reporting, but it's reporting and communicating something is changing or something is drifting. And so in the container closure space, I see that perhaps more process analytical approaches will be used and deployed in that pharmaceutical space. But also the container formats are continuing to evolve. They're continuing to be more patient-centric, auto-injectors, pen injectors, these types of devices. They're going to be smaller, perhaps more effective in delivering what the patient needs. You will have more multi-dose pen injectors, so doses where you're injecting yourself multiple times from the same sterile barrier. And all of those present a different challenge, different risks, different things that we have to test and observe. And I think that's long term. That's where PTI is going to continue to develop solutions that give the combination device space, as much manpower or gunpower as they need to assure the quality for their products. Um, we'll see oral solid dose come forward again. GLP-1 drugs are moving to oral solid dose. Oral solid dose are not really that critical when it gets to container closure integrity, unless it is a product that will degrade from oxygen or moisture ingress. And at that moment, you typically are seeing it packaged in a cold form blister package. And at that moment, we can leak test it, no problem. But for the most part, oral solid dose has not been a very, let's say, aggressive space for CCI.
Yeah, your combination product description is really interesting, in what we might see down the pike and the challenges it poses. Have we gotten better at predicting failure before it happens with all this data that we're collecting?
I'll say that we've gotten better at engineering the containers. So engineering the problems out of the containers first. And so that goes into that container design space. So inherent integrity testing using helium. So behind you, you might see some helium production systems on the floor. And those helium leak testing systems are there to assure that the design itself is perfect. So that step alone and that work, putting that effort into the pharmaceutical design is, I think, the most critical step to preventing pharmaceutical failure down the line. That is number one. And so we have a lot of clients that find great success in deploying helium and think it's an excellent tool for troubleshooting and addressing specific container design issues. When you design those failure points out, then you're dealing with just standard stack up tolerance of the entire quality system, components, product, parts, everything, right? And so at that point, you're dealing with production line quality, and that's a different beast. And I'll say that not enough people are addressing end of line quality control as effectively as they could. And what I mean by that is by deploying the right CCI test solution that's deterministic, not probabilistic. Forget the die test. The die test doesn't work, okay? And there's some very clear articles that have been published and are continuing to come out that articulate why die ingress is very problematic in the parenteral space. But in that end of line quality space, moving from a probabilistic die type test to a deterministic CCI solution that offers you greater clarity, a robust test method that is repeatable. So if you have a defect, you can understand it more clearly, And it offers you that data integrity that you need to assure performance of this test method, and that we are doing what we say we're doing, and it's producing the results that we say it needs to produce, right? So everything about the pharmaceutical industry and what it stands for suggests that deterministic end of line testing is something that people should be doing more and more of, but we're not. And right there is one of the fallacies or the challenges that we had, that the industry has to be willing and ready to understand deterministic CCI and understand the value of adopting it. There's a fear of change. There's a fear to improve, and there's a lack of understanding what CGMP is, which is current good manufacturing practices. And if you have a current good manufacturing practice that's dangerous, but we know it's deficient, right? And we validate a better and more improved CCI test method. At that moment, CGMP, your test method has improved, and everything that was manufactured under the dying risk test is still CGMP. That stuff is fine. It's fine. And everything that is now goes out the door under the new test method, the new and improved method, is CGMP. And that's great and fine too. You're not going to be finding outsized problems that you didn't know you had out the gate, but you certainly are going to prove your reliability, your assurance that the test method isn't performed incorrectly, and you're going to have the data to prove it, right? So I think that's the most important aspect to for clients to understand about that journey of deploying CCI. It's something that will absolutely improve the operations ability to control quality.
Yeah.
Right.
It's amazing everything that goes into, as you described this, that results in me, a patient, I have a headache, I go to the cabinet, open up a bottle, with absolute confidence, that it's safe and it's gonna solve my problem. My headache will go away. So, it's amazing that everything all the things that go into that to ensure that, that
Yeah. And
quality.
oral solid dose, that calculus is pretty straightforward. At the moment you're getting to parenterals, you're dealing with liquid
Yep.
solutions that um, are a microbial soup waiting for microbes to ingress. There is no guarantee that you can observe, or you most likely can't observe that microbial ingress or observe that your container is contaminated. So there's a lot of risks that are associated with the parenteral space that immediately change the conversation
Yeah,
and suggest that a heightened level of information and knowledge is needed about this specific quality.
yeah. Fantastic, very interesting stuff. We're living in very uncertain times. When I talk to folks in this industry, in all of the industries, med device, food, pharmaceutical, that's the one thing. Boy, I'm feeling uncertain about how things.
Yep.
I don't know if COVID, I think, kind of sparked, ignited this thing. That left us uncertain. We went, supply chains came right after that. Like, where are things coming from? Where are the shortages? Now, tariffs have come into everybody's vocabulary like it's never had before. And you said something to me not long ago that you said, when times of uncertainty, the regulatory bodies out there for these industries, we need clarity from them, and it can help us feel more certain about what's going on.
Mhm.
What did you mean by that? And would you talk a little bit more about that and why
Yeah.
you think that?
I mean, we're in the pharmaceutical industry here. I don't think there's much doubt in most professionals' mind within this industry that the regulatory body has taken a departure from typical scientific thought. And maybe we should speak more freely. Like we shouldn't speak in code. The FDA is out of bounds. The FDA has taken a strict departure or a sharp departure from normal scientific activity. There's some actions that we may all agree with, like yeah, red dye maybe shouldn't be in our food. That's cool, right? But immediately throwing out a lot of scientific data or pulling a lot of investment from spaces where there is a significant scientific opportunity and hope. These are, things that we start to question. Why are we creating so much damage to the scientific community, a community that relies on Longevity relies on long-term studies, relies on that value. And that's something that the United States and we'll call it the pharmaceutical industry, the broader life science industry has been really reveled for the scientific work and the quality that they bring. We just went through COVID. I'm in New York. In the state of New York, we had freezer trucks, right? This is like a very real thing. And the pharmaceutical industry stepped up and delivered and came and brought some level of normalcy to the world. And for us to be in a state right now where we are not operating with the level of scientific forethought that is required, that this society needs, and that our community needs for a healthier society, I think that's troublesome. So when it gets to the regulatory actions, right? So let's just go to how we're being regulated in the pharmaceutical space and the what the industry is, what they need, right? The industry has always asked, like, hey, we just need better clarity on Annex 1. We need better clarity on PUPSID or any of these new regulations come out. Any new regulations, they're already looking for clarity. And so when the FDA, under this new regime, is bringing significant, we'll call it change to how they're regulating, what they're focused on, data integrity, I'm not sure if that still is their number one focus or is it CMC? I don't know, right? So uh, there's so many different things that this industry needs to be successful. One thing is for certain is stability and clarity. So if the regulatory bodies are going to shift with the wind, and I think we've seen a dramatic turn from the regulatory bodies, which is far too aggressive of a turn, but is it going to turn back? What is the future scientific stance of the agency? I think that is something that we need better clarity on. So I ultimately, the FDA is here as a regulatory body, and the community really just needs stability in what the FDA is focused on, what they need, and what this industry needs to do to be successful in that environment. I don't know
Thank
if my police department in town changed the speed limit signs regularly and just move stop signs every Tuesday, I would be a little bit um I would be concerned, right? And I think that's something that we all need to voice that. We need to make that clear, right? This industry needs stability. And it needs that strong scientific fabric. That's not something we can go without.
Yeah. Great analogy with the stop signs and traffic signs. That's a great analogy, and thank you for saying that. You know, uh, there are things in this industry that what are we afraid to talk about? You're not, and so thank you for raising that. I think let that be a wake up call maybe for some. So thank you. Well,
Yeah.
Oliver, thank you very much for joining the Trailblazers. How can our audience get a hold of you and the team at PTI?
Yeah, so PTI, you can hit our website www.pti-ccit.com. So we're operating. We have a site in Europe and the site here, and ultimately you give us a phone call too. But if you hit the website, you'll find us there. Look us up on the internet, PTI, Packaging Technologies and Inspection. We are at a lot of the upcoming conferences for parenterals and other high-risk packaging applications. So we're very active in that space. You might see us at a PDA event or something of that nature. And we're definitely very active both in Europe and in Asia, really trying to offer some educational opportunities around CCI and quality risk management around primary container package formats. So you'll also see some of those workshops. There's a workshop coming up in Europe shortly. So those are a great opportunity to really A, get to know the team, and B, create a very strong education for yourself in how to approach CCI and how to pursue better quality for your primary package. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I encourage everyone to reach out, contact Oliver and his team at PTI. You won't regret it. You're going to learn something. I've always had great conversations like the one we just had. So thank you, Oliver. My guest today has been Oliver Stauffer. He is the Chief Executive Officer for Packaging Technologies and Inspection, also known as PTI. Oliver, thank you for being a trailblazer.
Perry, thank you so much for having me.